Welcome to mySci Unit 8, Putting on a Show with Light and Sound. In this video, we'll talk about Section 3 and Lesson 5, What is Volume? In Section 3, students are going to answer the question, how do we describe sound? In the lessons in Section 3, they're going to look at volume, pitch, and rhythm, all characteristics of a sound. Lesson 5 starts the conversation about how we can describe sound by talking about what volume is. In this lesson, students are going to be reminded that volume is influenced by the force that creates the sound in the first place. The harder the force that's exerted on an object, the louder the sound. The weaker the force, the softer the sound. In the engage portion of this lesson, you're going to ask students, what is the difference between loud and soft sounds? Ask students to brainstorm ideas about what loud sounds are and what soft sounds are. As a class, you'll fill out the loud and soft chart handout found in the student journal. Choose 6 different objects and have the students test to see if these sounds are loud or soft. To make connections to previous lessons, ask students what they remember about vibrations and how vibrations can affect whether something is a loud or a soft sound. For the explore part of this lesson, gather students together and ask, how can we make the tuning fork sound louder or softer? Demonstrate how to use a tuning fork safely, and then ask for 2 student volunteers. Have your student volunteers walk around the room testing different surfaces. As they test different surfaces, see if they can make the tuning fork sound louder or softer. You can also challenge them to try hitting or striking the tuning fork in different ways to see if that can change the volume. As a class, record your observations about how the tuning fork sounded different when you hit different surfaces or struck the tuning fork in different ways. Students will record their observations on the student journal page, changing the volume. For the explain portion of this lesson, you will need the rulers found in Lesson 2 of this unit. Pass 1 ruler out to each pair of students. Remind students how to make sound with the ruler by holding one end of the ruler on the desk while hitting the other end of the ruler. Have students work together to try to make the ruler louder and softer. While they're doing this, have them think about what they're doing differently to produce a louder noise versus a softer noise. Have students turn and talk, and they should discover that to make a louder noise, they hit the ruler harder, meaning they exerted more force on the ruler. When they wanted a softer noise, they didn't hit the ruler as hard, which means they didn't exert as much force. At this point of the lesson, you'll introduce students to the vocabulary word volume. You'll explain to students that volume describes the intensity of a sound, how loud or how soft that sound is. Tell students that the unit we use to measure the volume of sound is decibels. In the elaborate portion of this lesson, you'll ask students, how can we make our voices louder? Bring up 2 students that you can use as a pair and have them try to communicate with each other from across the room. Ask these students if they could do something to make their voices louder. Demonstrate to students that they can use their hands to make a cone or a funnel around their mouth. Then give the 2 volunteers paper and tape so they can make their own cone to make their voices louder. Prompt your 2 volunteers to make noises at high and low decibels. As your student volunteers are changing the intensity of their voices, have your other students record their observations on changing the volume in their student journal. In the evaluate portion of this lesson, you'll ask students, what affects the volume of sound? Have students think back to the ruler experiment and record their observations on the handout, changing the volume, found in their student journal. You should be looking to see if students make the connection that the more force you exert, the louder the sound. Students can choose to either draw or write about how they change the sound of the ruler. Encourage students to use the scientific drawing rubric to add detail to their picture. By the end of this unit, students should be able to answer the question, what is volume? They've explained that volume is determined by the amount of force applied to an object, and they will use this idea as they think about putting on a show with light and sound.